3-year-old boy began saying things no one expected from a child. Not fantasies, but memories. Memories of being a grown man, running a business, having a family, and dying from a gunshot to the head. He described the attack in detail. He talked about people he had never met and places he had never visited. And he insisted he knew exactly where that life ended. His parents tried to ignore it at first, but as he grew older, the strange statements only became clearer, too precise and too consistent to dismiss. When the family finally tried to verify his claims, the results stunned everyone, and the case became one of the most thoroughly documented reincarnation investigations ever recorded. On December 11, 1982, a boy was born in Bad Village, 8 miles south of Agra, India. His name was Titu Singh, and his first days were like any other child's. Soft cries in the night, wobbling first steps, and the delight of splashing in monsoon puddles. Yet as he learned to speak, Titu's words would astonish everyone around him. By the age of 1.5, he was telling his family to take care of his wife and children. He insisted he was not from Bad at all, but from the nearby city of Agra. His parents and siblings were puzzled. He complained that their home was dirty and poor, saying, "My house is very big," and talking about driving a car instead of walking. These statements made no sense to his family back home. As the boy grew into a toddler, his claims continued. One day he said, "I used to go by car. I will not go on foot or in a bus." When his mother asked who he was, he replied, "I am from Agra. I don't know how I came here." He even complained that his mother's clothes were too simple, saying, "My wife had beautiful saris." His family had never met any of these people he talked about, yet he spoke of them with confidence. Sometimes he became very sad, crying and saying he wanted to go home. He would call his parents Gula's parents as if they were not his real mom and dad. These behaviors startled everyone who knew him. By age 3 and 4, the boy began giving more details. He said his name was Suresh Varma, and he claimed to have had a radio and electronic shop in Agra called Suresh Radio in Sadar Bazaar. He even said he had been a smuggler and a tough guy using the local word gunda. He told that his wife's name was Uma and that they had 2 children, Ronu and Sonu. He described their appearance and how he once took them to a fair and how he used to hide money in a hole in the floor of their house. His parents tried to ignore it, but as he grew older, the strange statements only became clearer. Curious about these odd claims, the boy's older brother decided to investigate. His brother and his friend went looking for the shop he always mentioned. They found a store named Suresh Radio in the Sadar Bazaar of Agra and met the owner's widow, Uma Varma. When they told her about the boy's claims, Uma was shocked. She explained that her husband, named Suresh Varma, had indeed owned that shop and had been shot dead on August 28, 1983, just months before the boy was born. Uma and her family decided to visit Bad Village to see if this boy was truly connected to their late husband. When Uma and 4 other members of Suresh's family arrived in Bad, the boy was outside playing. He saw them approach and became extremely excited. He immediately recognized Suresh's widow, Uma, and his parents. He called out to his own parents that his other family had come and he wanted to meet them. The family sat down to talk, and the boy began telling them things that no one in his village could have known. He named Suresh's 2 children by their nicknames and said he missed them. He described a family picnic to a nearby village that Uma had taken Suresh and the kids on, mentioning the sweets they ate. Uma was astonished. These were details only she and Suresh's family knew. The boy also said his home had a certain shape and a locked room, and he even demanded to know why the children were not brought to meet him. All these details matched Suresh's life and his family's experiences. The family wanted to test him further. Later, they arranged to take him to Agra. They drove him to a street with many shops and asked him to identify which was his old shop. At first, they tricked him and brought him to a different electronics store to see if he would be confused. He immediately said this was not his shop. Then they took him to the real Suresh radio and electronics store. He walked in and recognized the changes made since Suresh's death. He saw a photo of the previous owner, Suresh, on the wall and said, "That's me." He pointed to the drawer where money was kept and correctly identified the store manager who worked there. He even noticed a display case that had been added after Suresh died, seeming puzzled by it because it wasn't there when he owned the shop. On a visit to Suresh's parents' house, the boy behaved very differently than usual. He clung to them and acted like their son. When his own father tried to take him away to go home, the boy protested, saying, "I am not yours. You are not my mother." And he even hit his father's shirt in anger. He finally calmed down only when he was promised another visit to Suresh's family. At that visit, he pointed out more details. He recognized Suresh's children and some features of Suresh's old house, down to small things like the placement of lamps. In total, before he had ever met any of these relatives, he gave about 15 statements that could be checked and were all true. After meeting them, he made many more true statements, 31 more, with only one thing said wrong. He also correctly identified 10 people and 4 places related to Suresh's life. Soon after these meetings, Suresh's family noticed something else about the boy. He had unique birthmarks. On the right side of his temple was a small circular mark that looked like a bullet entry wound. On the back of his head were some marks that looked like exit wounds from a bullet. He also had a birthmark on the top of his head. The family knew that Suresh had been shot in the head. Later, when the researchers checked Suresh's autopsy report, they found that Suresh had indeed been shot in the right temple, and the bullet had exited behind his ear, matching those details exactly. The boy's family shaved part of his hair on camera to reveal the marks. There was a round indentation on his right temple, just where Suresh's entry wound was. On the other side of his head was another mark where the exit wound had been. His skull was slightly deformed behind his right ear, matching the shape of Suresh's wound. These physical marks on the boy's body seemed to match Suresh's fatal injuries in a way that amazed everyone. One of the most startling things he said was how he died. He told that he remembered being shot by 2 men. He said he was sitting in his white car one night after work, had blown his horn to announce he was home, and then 2 men ran up and shot him. He remembered the bullet hitting him in the head on the right side. He even described which direction the killers came from. The boy's family did not know if any of this was true, but the details were very specific. According to later reports, his statements about the murder were all correct, matching the official police and autopsy records of the man named Suresh Varma. Notably, he identified one of the assailants by name. Titu's detailed recollections, including the names of his alleged murderers, were significant enough to prompt legal proceedings. He provided testimony in an Agra court, which contributed to the investigation and eventual conviction of the individuals involved in Suresh Varma's murder. This case had one more strange twist. The dates didn't match simple reincarnation. Suresh Varma was killed on August 28, 1983. The boy was reportedly born either on December 11, 1982 or December 10, 1983. Records were unclear. If Titu was born in late 1982, then Suresh died when Titu was about 8 months old. If Titu was born in late 1983, then Suresh had died a few months before Titu was born. In other words, the man died around the same time, or even after the boy's conception. This raised the possibility of something called a replacement reincarnation, or the idea of soul entry. In Hindu thought, there is a concept known as parakaya pravesha or parakaraya pravesha, meaning a spirit or soul entering another person's body. Some believe a soul can enter a body even before or shortly after birth, if certain conditions allow it. If Tita's birth date was 1982, then it would suggest that perhaps Suresh's soul entered the boy's body when the boy was a baby. If Tita's birth was really in 1983, then the entering would have had to happen before the baby was born, about 9 months after Suresh's death. Either scenario is unusual. The villagers and even the families were not aware of these detailed timelines, so they simply thought of it as normal reincarnation. But researchers pointed out that this case is unique, because the child's birth and the previous person's death overlap in a rare way. It meant that for a few months, the boy's original soul, if any, would have overlapped with Suresh's soul, which challenges ordinary understanding of how reincarnation might work. Word of this case spread. In 1988, an Indian magazine, India Today, featured the story under the headline, "A Startling Case." In 1990, the BBC produced a television documentary in its 40 minutes series about the boy's story. Academic researchers also took interest. Dr. Antonia Mills, an anthropologist invited by famous reincarnation researcher Dr. Ian Stevenson, studied this case in detail in 1987 to 1988. She went through all the records, interviewed both families, and followed the events closely. Mills found that the boy's statements were not things his family could have made up or learned by chance. She reported that, aside from one minor slip after meeting the family, he had made more than 40 accurate statements about the past life and identified 10 people correctly and 4 places connected to Suresh. She noted that Tita's behaviors were strikingly similar to Suresh's personality. Both were active, fearless, and quick to anger. Mills published her findings in a scientific journal, saying that, aside from reincarnation, no normal explanation accounts for all that happened. Skeptics have questioned whether the families could have known or coached Titu, but investigators found no evidence of fraud. The boy had simply been a young child who began telling these stories long before anyone sought him out. The families had not met each other before, and Titu's parents had no apparent motive to make up such detailed lies. The coincidences of names, places, and especially the matching birthmarks seemed too unlikely to dismiss easily. Today, Titu Singh Titu lives a quiet life, far from the drama of the past. He grew up and pursued a peaceful path. He studied yoga and later earned a medical degree in yoga and naturopathy. In fact, he became an assistant professor at Banaras Hindu University in Varanasi, teaching yoga therapy and naturopathy. By his own account, he does not live the violent life that he described as Suresh. In a recent podcast interview, Titu discussed how these memories have stayed with him, but he has made peace with the mystery. The story of Titu Singh Titu remains one of the most famous reincarnation cases from India. It is often cited in books and articles about past life memories. Some people see it as powerful evidence that our souls continue after death and can return with memories. Others remain puzzled or skeptical, suggesting other explanations. But even skeptics have to acknowledge how many details aligned so neatly. The involvement of the police, the media, and researchers has meant that Titu's case is better documented than most. In the end, Titu Singh Titu's story remains one of the most compelling reincarnation cases ever recorded. Was Suresh Varma reborn in a new body? Or did chance, memory, and suggestion converge in one extraordinary child? Perhaps we will never know. Yet, his journey reminds us that some truths lie beyond proof, and that the most remarkable stories often begin with the simplest declaration: I was Suresh Varma. Like and subscribe. Let's uncover what lies in the next episode together. Thanks for watching.